Jack of all trades, master of none, is a figure of speech used in reference to a person who has dabbled in many things rather than gaining expertise by focusing only on one. So much knowledge and wisdom out there at our fingertips, yet so difficult to grasp. Everything and everyone has a little bit of the truth, and it's up to us to determine what our truth is. In this busy world, creating the time, the space to nourish our body, mind, and soul has become a difficult task. Join me on this journey of learning as we touch diverse topics in spirituality and wellness. Using a skeptical yet open perspective, we will learn together, for we are all students of life and experience. There is no right or wrong path. There's only your path, your journey. So let's begin our adventure and explore all the world has to offer, and let us become a master of none.
Hey, I'm Hollis Taylor, and I'm a non-binary person, and I call myself a Divine Androgyne. Be like saying that you're a monk or a practitioner of magic or something like that. Maybe it depends on what path you walk. See, one of the things I noticed as I started to come out and started to identify as non-binary, I started to realize that there was no spiritual path for people like me. There were some things like indigenous people, but I don't want to culturally appropriate. I didn't grow up on a reservation. And I think Two-Spirit is great, and I want them to keep it. And I felt like I had to define my own path, because I didn't have a huge background in these things. And so I started to explore things. And, of course, some religions shame us, right? And then there's some religions that don't even include us, like Wicca. I went to many rituals, and never, not once, did they mention someone that was both or neither gender or god or goddess. Unless you asked, and then they would often have a goddess or something. But there was no language for it. And so as I started my own spiritual path, my own path of holistic learning, I learned that I really needed a spiritual path in order to be who I was. I felt like it was part of humanity. It was part of being a human. And I needed to be celebrated in my spiritual path. I needed to be seen, and I didn't want any of the shame. So that's not for me. That's theirs. And so as I started to unfold, I started to realize that I had my own path, and each one of us actually do. You do. Everybody does. Has their own spiritual path that they're to unlock. Your authenticity is in your heart, just like it was in mine. There were some things I had to go through to unlock those keys, to get closer to who I really was inside. because all of us are divine conscious beings, and you have to work through some weird stuff sometimes, like cultural norms, gender roles, and gosh, mental health and the crap your parents programmed in there. Sometimes we have to unfold that out. And when we do, we get to an authentic surface, an authentic person when we move through those surface things. And when we find our authenticity, we can go deeper. We can love deeper. We can love ourselves deeper. We can love other people deeper. And we can enjoy our life fuller and more, and feel more complete by the time it comes time to, end, because we all die. None of us get out of alive. So just consider, as you start to identify and find your gender is not something that was given, that is not something that was assigned to you when you were born. As you start to realize your gender expression, no matter what it is, I'm talking to the drag queens, the drag kings, the gay guys, transgender people, non-binary people, gender-neutral people, all of us, we're all here for a reason. The divine sent us here. We're all here to define our own path, make it what it is. Follow that part of you that doesn't follow the rules, the part of you that doesn't do what other people are doing. Because that part of you will lead you to the path you need to be on. And you will manifest the beautiful things that the world desperately needs. All of us are where we need you. We need you to step up and bring your most beautiful light to the world. And I hope that that's what this book does. That my book, Divine Androgyne, A Sacred Path for Gender Variant People, and this channel will inspire you to find out who you are and open it up to the world and deliver it as if we were all waiting for it, but we didn't know what we were waiting for exactly. Show us what that is.
Welcome to Rainbow Soul, part of the WLFE DB network, an explorative discussion about spirituality beyond mainstream religions. Hollis Taylor, author, psychic, astrologer, and alchemical mage, brings their non-binary perspective together with fellow drag king and trans man LeKross Ortiz, a Jewish Taino with spiritual background of exploration that has led him to an atheist perspective. Join these guys as they explore deep and difficult topics, all related to spirituality, offering a queer perspective and exploration of interesting topics and engaging guests to help explore conversations for the Rainbow Soul.
Welcome, everyone. I'm really glad you're here. Thanks for watching Rainbow Soul. And I'm Hollis Taylor. I am an author, a witch, a psychic, a medium, and I help host the show. And I'm the author of Divine Androgyne. It's a sacred path for gender variant people. So please check it out and take a moment. It's all about defining your own path and overcoming things like trauma, shit like that. So I'm glad you're here in the show. And LeKross, how about you tell us about who you are?
Hi, I'm LeKross Ortiz. I am a trans man. I am a Jewish atheist Taino, jack of all trades and master of none, and an avid learner. Yeah, that's pretty much what I do.
Well, hey, learning is I think that's a lifelong journey.
Yeah.
That's what my father always believed in, we made an effort to learn something every day.
Yeah.
Today I learned how to pull a worm from a dung pile.
Really?
Yeah, really. I was doing vermicomposting all day. Not all day, but for several hours, handling compost. And I even got my fingernails clean, pulling worms out of there to move them into a new home.
Oh, wow.
I've been working with worms that eat your vegetable trash for a long time. I used to teach schools how to do it. And it's actually kind of a cool thing. You can have it in your kitchen, and you just put food scraps in there, and then you depends on what kind of, you could do like a homemade type of home, or you can buy a special little thing, and the worms will eat your vegetable compost trash and give you black gold in return. And you can use that black gold in your garden. And I assure you, things will grow and you will not have so many problems. Less bugs and better soil. And it's sustainable and helps the environment. So, yeah, so I've been doing it for a long time. And so today, as I was pulling the worms out, the worm would stretch and stretch. I'm like, dude, you really want to come with me? You don't want to stay in there because you're going to die, man. And, just kept making me thinking of Bright Hawk's story. Bright Hawk tells the story all the time. It's actually a Buddhist monk story about you can't pull a worm from a dung pile. So I won't try to tell the story because it's a very good story. But yeah, so so all day long as I tried to pull the worm from the dung pile, I was like, remember, you can't pull the worm from the dung pile, so just throw the whole dung pile in the worm bin.
There
you go. So, and pulling the black gold away from it, add that to my garden for the fall. So that's what I pretty much did all day, and learning more about worms and I'm putting them in a new system that I haven't used before. So, welcome, Joseph. I'm glad you're here. Welcome.
Jojo.
Welcome. I'm trying to read what he's saying there. I am the Jojo with a Filipino and Jewish Russian background. Okay, interesting. But is a Buddhist. Can't blame me there. I'm kind of Buddhist myself. I'm currently the vice president of the NAACP Lebanon County branch, and I'm leading the standing committee known as the LGBTQIAQ+ Fierce. That's fabulous, whoa, Joe. Thank you for your work in the world. That's totally awesome. We need that. We need more people doing that kind of thing, more people bringing that to the stage, and more people just honoring LGBTQIA people in general. So today we were going to talk about sacred gender bending. Now, I worded it that way because I wasn't really sure how to word this topic, in that, like, we've talked about that it being a sacred calling, but there are so many different ways to hear this call. And I know you, LeKross, you've probably met lots of people, you doing interviews with LGBTQIA people. Tell me, like, what is just some of the roles that you can think of, different ways that people come to gender bending of any kind?
Some of them came through drag. Drag was a big conduit for a lot of people, including myself. Some of them just kind of, like, I'm thinking of a special story. They just kind of always knew and started very young. I don't know, there's just so many different conduits to get there. I mean, most of the people I've encountered were through drag, that they started out with drag and either whether queen or king, and some of them actually are very gender, like gender queer. They literally flip back and forth through feminine and masculine. So most of my experience from people have been through drag. So
yeah, that's definitely one way. I think for me, although I definitely worked with drag queens when before I came to drag as a king, I also met a lot of cross dressers
Yeah.
because I was working in the sex industry. And so cross dressers often feel hidden, or like it's this big dirty secret.
Yeah.
So sex workers, of course, get a lot of those secrets. And then I think, and then as time went on, I also met people that were just um, they were just queer, like they were just gay, but they were still gender variant, because like I had a friend who used to do, he was a Wicca high priest, and this is in the Radical Fairies, and he would come out to do ceremony in high heels and a beautiful dress, but he would be wearing like a button-up shirt type, guys, a masculine shirt with a tie or something like that. And
Right.
he had a way of twisting gender around.
Yeah.
So he was part of the pagan community. His name is Eric Eldritch, and he's still part of the Radical Fairies. And then there were other people around him that were also pagan that did a very similar thing. Um, and so I already kind of knew about drag. And then as I mean, I had worked, I used to sell sex toys too. So like me and the drag queen would work it when I did that in the bar. So I definitely work with drag queens. So when I moved to Harrisburg area, that's how I came into drag. Somebody I'd just seen, they didn't say who. How did you get started in drag? So I went to a drag show with my transgender friend, who was going out to have a drink with me as I was questioning my gender. And I kind of just was watching the show, and a drag king came out, and I was like, I could do that.
Yeah.
I could totally do that. I
Right.
could do that really well, actually. And then uh, that pretty much did it. Later on in the night, I went to the bathroom, and that's when I met Jade and other drag queens, and they were like, "Absolutely, here's the Harrisburg drag race." And I entered the Harrisburg drag race and went on from there and won a few titles, including State Street and Mr. Lancaster PA Pride. Um, and I just know I am not in the Harrisburg area. Then what I did was I left Harrisburg and got to travel the country in an RV. So I got to perform in places like Arizona, Oregon, and let me just say, drag is everywhere. Drag is everywhere, but it is very prominent
Mm.
in small oppressed towns.
Yeah.
So, and I got to be part of like Boston Pride and stuff like that. So my friends, drag, no matter where you live, there's usually a drag community. Of course, I now live in the Rocky Mountains, and I have some drag friends and stuff here in Denver. Really sweet people. And, drag community is worldwide. I was told that if I come to Germany, I could perform there. So I was like, really? He was like, yeah, definitely. So LeKross, how about you answer Jeff's question? How did you get started in drag?
I got started in drag. It was started off about 9 years ago as I don't know, a challenge, I guess, or I just was curious. And I took my ex's clothes and I painted on, and I went to the bar and fooled everybody. They were sending me beers and beers and beers. And back then they called me mama at the bar. So when I went there, and even the bartender didn't recognize me until I smiled, and then they saw the gap and they're like, oh no, that's so wrong on every level. And they kept pushing me to do drag. Then finally I did. I did my first performance in the Tally Ho, and then went through Lancaster Drag Idol, which is another competitive drag venue. And it's a 10-week competition. So I did that. And then I just started doing drag 2-3 times a week and became addicted, because not so much the drag scene, but seeing myself as a male was what I needed. And I was doing 2, 3, sometimes 4 shows a week. And that's how I started. It was just starting. I went to the bar one time, and then it just took off. And then,
Well,
titles,
and,
the whole nine. I'm like,
and it helped you realize like your need to transition.
100%, 100%. I mean, I had always been there, but I think doing the drag, and actually, I think that's the interesting thing about drag is when you can actually see yourself. Like I put on the beard and I saw myself, and I always going back. I'm like, there you are. Now you look how I feel on the inside. And that was huge for me. And once again, and then it just started every day. I had to see it and just smear a little here and here and, there, because I had to see myself.
I understand that. It was an interesting experience for me because at the time I was questioning whether I needed to transition, if I needed to be seen as a man. And I invented this drag king named Izzy a He. So my drag name is Izzy a He, like Izzy a He, right? Okay. And literally that was kind of my question. Is he a he? Am I a he inside? And it was a great way to try it on. And at first I was really like, wow, it was like it was bliss. It was blissful and beautiful. And I really felt expressed. I felt seen for a long time. And then some time passed and I got used to seeing Izzy, like you said, LeKross doing a couple shows a week. I was Izzy everywhere. People knew me as Izzy. Even if I showed up like this, people would be like, Izzy. And I'm like, wait a minute. And I think that what happened to me was they started calling me he all the time.
Right.
And I was kind of okay with that. But then I was like, and something happened and I felt there was another part of me that didn't quite get seen. And I felt that I didn't want to walk away from what I felt like was a sisterhood, because I have mothered a child. I lived as a woman. I was married. I've been a wife. I have been a female sex worker. And I just felt like there was like this kind of sisterhood or something, and I wasn't ready to walk away from it. And I don't know if you walk away from it by transitioning, but that's what it felt like to me, that you weren't seeing that side of me. And so then when I was introduced to the idea of being non-binary, that seemed to really call to me inside. And I felt like I could listen to that.
Right.
That I was non-binary, and that I could be if I was expressed that way, it was easier for me to work with it.
Right.
It was easier for me to feel seen because I feel like I'm both. Right. So that's kind of how it worked.
I totally relate to that, because when I had been doing drag at that point, everybody called me he, and I had not transitioned. Like, it was there, but it wasn't really public. So my ex would get very angry and be like, why do they call you he? And I'm like, they're not wrong. And they couldn't understand that. It was very difficult for them. And I'm like, I'm sorry, but this is, and the more I kept hearing he, the more it started settling. Like, I was at peace. I wasn't, I was to the point I can't correct people, because to me, to correct them is to deny who I am. In my case, excuse me, sorry, I got a frog in my throat.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. So yeah, I totally identify with that,
Yeah. And I think, Joseph, you're saying something. I never done drag, but I thought if doing it not as a female, but just androgynous, I think, Joe, you totally can.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't worry about being broke. You figure it out. People let you borrow stuff. You'll be fine. But yeah, like for me, I've done androgynous drag. I think I don't know if you've done anything like that, LeKross,
I
but
did a gender bender once, and
didn't work for you.
no, it was so. It's terrible. I ended up doing a Mystique from X-Men, and the comic is very, I don't know, very feminine. And when I started getting the cat calls I was
Oh
like,
no.
No, never again, never again. And the men were being very disgusting, and I was like, no, never again.
I understand. That's not exactly the best part of it for sure. Um so it sounds like Jess, it sounds like I relate to a lot to that. The first time I cut my hair short, I was like, wow, I see myself. Exactly.
Yeah,
Jess, that's exactly how drag works. And the nice thing I think about drag is that you can also add magic to it.
yeah,
Because if you are called to the path of drag, it usually means that you're going to go out on stage. And there's something about having your audience feed that part of you. There's something about that feeds you and makes you feel brilliant and embody it more. And then while you're on stage, you probably become more and more confident, right? Like if the crowd is supportive, right? And then you feel more and more supported. And then the next thing you know, you really can embody that part of you. And then that feels um that kind of like fuels your own embodiment of drag, don't you think? You know what
oh
I'm
yeah,
talking about there?
absolutely, yeah,
Like,
absolutely. I think when you hit that stage, and whether it's 5 or 500, but you can feel that energy. It's like this. I hate to say, it's like this transference of energy, and and when you feel their energy, where they're excited and they're enjoying it, you can actually embody more of what you're doing. So so yeah.
yeah. And I think that, so that's one way. So clearly the two of us were called to our gender bend sort of through drag. And I did kind of hear the call through drag queens as I was like, there were no drag kings really before I seen that one drag king. Okay, there were no drag kings. And that's and before that I used to think, well, if there's drag queens,
Yeah.
there's got to be drag kings. And so I did hear the call of the sacredness of gender variance through drag. But there are some people that don't come through drag. I've met people that don't. I know a farmer who is a trans man, and I met him before he transitioned. And then I was his friend, continued to be his friend, regardless of his choices, as he chose to choose his masculine side to express. And he had to like leave home because he was born on a farm in Wisconsin, and he had to leave home. And he was a farmer at a place that I worked at, a CSA that I was part of, and he was a really good person. He just took some time, I guess, maybe doing all that farm tractor work or some part of that. Um, Fed his soul in a way. And after some time, we were outside of Baltimore, Maryland at the time. After some time, he started to tell me that he was probably trans. And then later he told me he was going to transition. Then we lost contact for a little while. And then we came back together here in Colorado. And he told me that he had transitioned and did I want to still see him? And I was like, yeah, man, you're still my friend.
Right.
And but I realized that that experience of transitioning, especially for him, it wasn't public like you're like
Right.
even you or I was, LeKross.
Right.
It was more private, and he lived on a farm with knowing very few people. His family struggled with it. His girlfriend was supportive. His wife was supportive, and even the farming community if you stay in the more sustainable, progressive farming community, is more supportive. So he was okay. And now today, I noticed he was back in Wisconsin.
Oh,
And I was like, oh, I guess his family got over it or something.
maybe.
Um, yeah, and I'm gonna reach out to him and see what's going on, see how
Right.
things are for him. But in that experience, that was a very private experience. Did he change the world by transitioning?
Right.
Yes, he
Right.
did.
Right.
His path is still just as sacred as yours or mine. It Even though
That
it was a fairly private experience.
well, that leads me to a similar story, but not in a farm. Actually, in the Jewish Orthodox community, there is a rabbi who is a trans man, and there is a trans woman, and they actually transitioned within the Orthodox community, which is very private, very private. But they literally, like, in the Orthodoxy, the men and the women pray separately. So she was able to now pray with the women, and he was able to teach and be a rabbi and do many, many things. So, I mean, and their path is very sacred, because here they are in this very Orthodox community, which you would think that's a no go. Especially, it's, the more conservative the religion, the less accepting society is for us.
Hmm.
And to see the Orthodoxy accept them and embrace them and allow them to be able to be themselves and transition, it's a beautiful thing. And that continues the work, because now they're taking it to a whole new level within the religion, which is so, how it is, they're conservative, but to see them do that work in there and bring people around and say, hey, we still are spiritual, we still are human beings, we still are, we're the same person, we just made the outside match the inside. That's all that happened. Nothing drastic really happened.
Yeah, and
So,
I think that even the small circle that they touch, of course, they're touching the Orthodox spiritual community.
yeah,
My farmer friend, right? Like he's mostly just touching his friends, his family,
right,
right? Like his brother was totally comfortable with it, but his
right,
parents had some time. They had to get used to it. And I think that the community, like even for those people that are transitioning privately, your path is still sacred. Like even if you're not public about it, even if a
right,
lot of people don't know about it, even if you hesitate about it for a long time,
right,
it's still sacred. So
right,
that's what I'm kind of here to say. And then the other type of people, especially that I notice, they really struggle with their sacredness as far as gender variant people, are cross dressers.
mm,
And these are people, when I say cross dresser, I define that as a person that does it in private, usually, sometimes public, but most of the time private, and they do it for sexual reasons, which is fine. Um, I don't I don't like to make them into super perverts.
right,
I think that sexuality has a way of bringing forth things that we ignore or oppress,
uh-huh,
especially our shadow. So when people express their gender variance in sexuality, it makes me say, okay, well, there clearly might be oppressing it elsewhere. And most of the time, those people don't tell anyone.
mhm,
Sometimes nobody knows. Their wife doesn't know. Their children don't know. Nobody knows. Are those people sacred? Yes, they are. And there are several reasons why. And I would say that um, their sacred path actually touches the world because they still live in the world.
right,
They might have a job or whatever. Now, sometimes they're prejudiced or homophobic against a person that's trans.
Right.
And I think that that's a little bit of jealousy or a little bit of, like, don't show me who I am,
Right. Self-hatred, a little self-hatred.
like self-hatred, and they're projecting it at this transgender person in their life. That happens sometimes. So if you're a transgender person suffering with that, I'm sorry. And just know that it's about them, not you.
Right.
Um, and so there's that, yes. And that, even that is a catalyst for change, because transgender people like me and you, LeKross, we go, you know what?
Yeah.
And we say fuck you, and I'm doing it anyway,
Right.
right? And I know we're not the only ones. There's a lot of transgender people that have had to do that, and it's kind of the fuel that gets you out of the station,
Yeah.
right? That gets you from sitting on the chair saying I might be trans to the person that says I am trans, and you're not going to tell me I'm wrong for it.
Right.
So
Right.
it's often a catalyst. If it doesn't come through like that, the other way it comes through is where, and these are my favorite kinds of cross dressers sometimes, is that they will be very gentle
Mhm.
with a transgender person. They will be very understanding. They will be very, like, opening doors for them. Even secretly, they'll do it.
Right.
They'll
Right.
be like, so I just, he's homophobic, and I'm sorry, and I don't have any problem with with you being
Right.
trans, and this is how I want to help you.
Right.
And so, in my opinion, even the people that are cross dressers that choose to express in that way, and of course they're changing the sex industry, which is also very important for them to change. And I assure you, they are also changing the DOMs that they see.
Mm.
There are a lot of them that see professional dominatrix, and I've met these women, and I've been one of those women. And when they visit, every single crossdresser that came to me, I was always like, fascinating. First of all, why do I get a lot of crossdressers? And second of all, this is a fascinating expression that is in, and we got to explore in their mind how much they wanted to be a woman, and how that they wanted to explore that side of them, and that changed me.
Mm.
That changed my opinion of what it was and what it meant to be trans and to be a crossdresser. So absolutely, they are changing the DOMs that they are seeing, or the sex workers that they are visiting, or any other place that they might be mingling around. So even cross-dressers, people like to give them a bad name, but they're just human beings like the rest of us, and most of them are just living with, I think you're right. So here we go. Eve said, sometimes the secrecy involved inflicts shame, right, Eve? Which is problematic in reconciling urges and identification and being able to overcome the shame mentally. Exactly, Eve. And that's kind of like, I think that's what happens sometimes with cross-dressing people, with people, especially if they're very, very, very secret about it.
Right.
That nobody knows or can even imagine this tough guy who cross-dresses or something like that.
I think it's so sad because there's such a, and it's really hard for men, because in that aspect is for them to show any effeminate in any effeminate way. It's just, oh yeah, the guys are so stupid. Like, we are dumb, and I tried, and that was something so interesting, because before I was very toxic masculine. I was a very toxic masculine person pre-transition, which is crazy. But when I transitioned, it allowed me to embrace femininity, or mine, which it's not very feminine, but it's still there. I mean, because of that whole carrying two genders within you, what you're born with and what your soul is, and trying to embrace both of them and unite them. You have to start. You can't, okay, in my opinion, you can't, like me transitioning to a man, I couldn't erase her. Okay. I could put her to sleep, I can put her away, but I can't erase it. It's like even a bad breakup. Yeah, you can walk away from it, but you can't erase it. It's always going to be a part of you for the rest of your life. And that's how I figure with who I was. But then in actually looking at myself, instead of hating that, I actually learned to love her and kind of think, damn, you had it rough. And damn, there are some privileges here that I need to check. And I think it's so sad that these men, when they feel a little bit of femininity, it is shut down, shot down, done. And so I think if they were to be able to freely express femininity without any type of judgment, you would see more cross-dressing. Because that's just as taboo as now. Like, basically, I would call it the bottom of the barrel. We're the bottom of the barrel right now, in the senses those are the ones that people are going after. What the hell's trans? I don't understand it. Make up your mind. What are you, a man, or what are you really? You're not a real man. You're not a real woman, and all this bashing. And they're right along with us, because I do look at them as being under the trans umbrella.
Me too. And I think when I used to have cross-dresser clients, I noticed that too. LeKross, first of all, most of them would walk in. I swear, some of them were football players.
Oh, I'd believe it.
Big, tough, big, burly men. And I'm like, you want me to put you in a dress? I hope you brought your own dress, sweetie, because I don't know if I have a dress. And there were times that I had to be really creative about how I would dress them as a woman. Right. And I did. And I found that they would walk in toxic and walk out. It was almost as if they were creating their own treatment for their toxic masculinity. Yeah. So in order to, and that's what I realized after hundreds of cross-dressing clients as a professional dom, I figured out that they were using it like medicine. And they were using it to balance out the toxic masculinity that they experienced on a day-to-day basis. Right. All of the things that made them oppress their emotions, all of the things that made them oppress any femininity that they might have felt or express or felt like expressing, like they would oppress it all and then bring it to those sessions. And it was like medicine for these guys.
Yeah, because that sense of release, like, okay, this is the one environment where I can be myself, where I can be free, and it's so hard to find a safe space, just even like on regular, even less when, which why do you, I always say, why do so many people who are trans, like a lot of them do start in the drag community, because this is the first community that it's not for a woman to dress up as a man or a man to dress up as a woman. That's not anything taboo. In the drag community, everybody does it, so it's
the idea
space.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, so yeah, cross-dressers are one expression. Then there's people that transition really privately. Then there's also like the other type of person I've encountered are gender fluid people. That like every single day, and sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, they change their gender identity. And it can be hard to keep up with, and they're aware of that usually. And that they change their gender, or that their gender changes, I suppose. They don't change their gender, but it changes for them throughout the day. And it's kind of like a flood of water.
Yeah, it's very... become water, it's like Bruce Lee, become water. It was really neat, because I was walking downtown and there is so much gender fluidity here where I'm at, and I'm walking downtown, and this gender, I'm gonna say it was obviously they were born male, but man, they were rocking their little spaghetti strap dress with their little heels, with their little, and I was like, yes, yes. It's like the whole time I'm just looking at them and I'm like, that's so beautiful to me. I look at that and I'm like, because it's, I get so happy and prideful for their freedom to be able to do that, in such a binary world where they're like, I don't give a shit. I'm getting up and I'm going to put heels on and I'm going to put a dress on and my head's shaved and I got a 5 o'clock shadow and all this just wrapped up in one human being. And to me, that is like, that's the epitome of beautiful in a sense when you're thinking of us, because they have that courage to go out there and do that. And that's what's so beautiful to me.
Yeah, I would agree that definitely that's what JoJo's saying. I really think transgender people are a symbol of bravery. I agree, Joseph. Transgender people are a symbol of bravery. I think even cross-dressers are. I think everybody that does it in any way, I think that all of us are brave. And so gender fluid people, I found that for them, gender is so fluid that it's like water. It's hard to separate. And I think that that's okay. And I think they have a different message for the world, which is exactly what I just said, is that gender can't be separated. And that it really is, we are really all one human being. And they kind of carry that message. And I think so do non-binary people, especially people that identify as gender neutral, where they are kind of like, I don't get gender, I don't have a gender, those sort of identities. You see it come out in a variety of ways. I've seen it, I've witnessed it. And I'm like, oh, okay. And one person called themselves without gender. And that was beautifully sacred to me as well. And what makes something sacred? And I think that what makes something sacred is that it has some sort of impact on the world as a whole.
Right.
And even if it's only one other person. And often it's not, because if nothing else, often it's several people. Lots of people are influenced by you. Even if you are a toxic male, that's mean to transgender people. I assure you, as a catalyst, that you're catalysting some people out of sitting on the bench, and making us angry enough that we have to do something.
Right.
So even those people are important. And of course, I think allies are super important. Why? Because they're the person that's in the conversation that we're not in. Right? And someone is misgendering me. So then when the ally says, I think Hollis needs they, them, you should use they, them. Or, a person that can kind of stand up and understand. I found that they understand. I don't know about you, but most of the allies I know have done a lot of work around gender.
Right.
But they just concluded that they were cis.
Right. Exactly. I think most of my allies, I mean, a lot of them are cis. I actually have a little bit more struggle within the community than I do outside of the community. And I mean, it happens, but usually when I encounter people and, you have to have that whole coming out again because you meet new people or you start a new job and you're like, oh, they're going to find out. Because I live a very public life. So it's not like I hide being transgender. I bullhorn that everywhere, So it's always there's always that conversation, and what's beautiful is at the end of the conversation to say, well, first off, I would have never known if you wouldn't have told, or if this person wouldn't have said anything. And second off, it doesn't matter. And when you hear that, they're like, no, I see a man and that's what you are. And that's how you portray yourself. And that's what you want to be called. You're a man. And they leave it at that and end of conversation. And most of I would say 90% of the allies or people that I talk with, that's where the conversation goes, and that's how it ends, and that's it.
Mm-hmm,
You know.
yeah, for me, a similar thing happens. If I say I'm not binary, they'll thank me for telling them. And then I'll ask them for they pronouns. And that can be, I can have a mixed bag with that, with the they them pronouns. So you're getting he and you're transitioned. And I know that as a transition male, that's the benefit really of transitioning. That's one of the biggest benefits, is that people will see you as the gender that you choose to portray. And there are some people that have gotten better. And so Bright Hawk is saying people who seem to struggle with pronouns lack presence. It's usually true, Bright Hawk. And they do, there seems to be a lack of like they'll just keep talking and I'm like they, and I'll just keep correcting them. And then sometime, after like the 20th correction, then they'll be like, why do you keep saying they? And I'm like, because that's my pronoun. Oh, was I using she? They don't even know that they were using it. And then, of course, there are some people that do microaggressions. Microaggressions. Yeah, it's all good.
Allergies have been crazy. I got ragweed. Ragweed is hard right now.
It's fall, yeah. Well, bless you.
Thank you.
And I think that there's microaggressions, and you may have had some of this. I noticed that trans women get a lot of this, where they've come out, they start transitioning, people notice that they transition, but a person will be like he like that or she like that, and I'm like, they're transitioning and clearly asking for the other one, but you're going back to the oh man, come on, stop misgendering them.
I've had that done so many times because they knew who I was. And then what I think aggravates me the most is when they want a confirmation. Like I would say, yeah, I knew you like this before. And I said, that doesn't mean anything. It doesn't, just because you knew me before doesn't give you the right to continue, and they're looking for that confirmation of, or justification as to why they said she, because they knew me before. You see what I'm saying? And I never could understand why. I would tell them, I'm like, what do you see? Like, if you say you can't tell, then maybe it's a they, them. If it's an androgynous person, then maybe it's a they, them. And go with they, them, because that's literally the safest way. I said, but if you see there's hair growing, the voice is deeper, there's nothing here, I think you got to go with he. I'm going to shoot it at, we'll roll the dice. Let's see. But I've had mad microaggression, and it's frustrating. I've had it for people who met me like this, then found out, and then switched up on me.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And worse off, at a bar in front of people.
At a queer bar?
No, it was at my work, and it got ugly. Person kept saying she, and it started off, they wanted to know what I looked like previously, and I don't have a problem with that. I really don't, because I'm not ashamed of it. I don't go out of my way to show it, but if you genuinely want to know and you're curious about it, then, and it's for educational reasons, look, this is what I look like. And the first response is, oh, you're so beautiful. Okay. All right. Well, I guess thank you. After that, she, nonstop.
Wow.
Yeah. And I literally had to go off on her and say, you didn't meet me. Oh, well, I saw the picture. I understand you saw the picture, but you see this every day. There is no excuse to say she. So, yeah.
And isn't that encounter that you had, as uncomfortable as it was, it was necessary and sacred.
Yeah.
It's part of your sacred path.
Mm-hmm. And so when you get misgendered as a gender variant person, you have to
And so when you get misgendered as a gender variant person, It's supposed to feel uncomfortable so
Right.
that you do something about
Right.
it.
Exactly.
And I
Exactly.
know that that's really hard to hear for some young people that are just now figuring out that they're trans, and
Right.
they feel that their gender is whatever, but
Right.
we're all part of the gender revolution, every
Right.
single one of us, and you are being called as an activist, as a person. You could stay in the closet if you wanted to, and that is a choice that some people choose, and I think that
Mm.
that's an okay choice too
Yeah.
for some people. Clearly they need that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to be out and you want people to use the appropriate gender pronoun, I assure you, you're probably going to get misgendered somewhere along the line. So find a way to deal with it. Find a way to not take it personally. Find a way to make it about them and not you, because it clearly wasn't about you, right, LeKross? It was
Oh,
clearly about that person misgendering
absolutely.
you. And that's
Absolutely.
microaggression
Yep.
because they are homophobic,
Yeah.
clearly. And
Absolutely.
or transphobic.
Right.
Transphobic is really what we could call that. Um, and I think that that we're here to change transphobic people.
Absolutely.
I think
Absolutely. I think it's a responsibility we have as being sacred people. You, if we're sacred, and our journey is sacred, and that means we have work to do, and the work will never stop. And it's our responsibility. I'm not going to say everybody has that responsibility. I'm going to say it's my responsibility. If I'm going to live my life out as a transgender person and call myself a trans man, because I've had people say, why don't you just call yourself a man? You don't have to say trans man. No, I do. I do have to say trans man because I can't hide. I could because I pass, but then in clear conscience, I can't hide. So if I'm going to be living my life publicly like this, then it is my responsibility to educate, to bring people to a better understanding of what being a transgender person is. I think it's my responsibility, and it's my, like you say, it's our calling.
Hmm.
And that's the gift we can give. Live our life authentically and educate and educate and educate. And educate
just
100 times. The same
yeah,
person. He
yep.
he. No, I'm not laughing. That's my pronoun.
There was this guy who I was part of a community, and he kept misgendering me. And he wouldn't always apologize, but he would be like, oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Not she. You want they. Okay. And then 20 minutes later, he would do it again. And he kept doing it and doing it and doing it. And so this is what I used, my friends, and I encourage you to take this and use it. Um, I I seen him as he wasn't a toxic male. He was a genuine guy that generally cares about people, generally. And I said, you know what? I pulled him aside, and in a private conversation, I explained that transgender people have the highest suicide rate of any other person. Do you know why that might be? And he was like, no, that's terrible. I didn't know that. I was like, yeah, out of any other group of people, transgender people have the highest suicide rate. I think one of the number one reasons that transgender people end up killing themselves is because they can't be seen. And
Mhm.
one of the ways that a person is seen is with language. So every time you misgender me, you pretty much punch me in the gut. And
Yeah.
he's like, oh my God, I don't mean to do that. Oh my. And I'm like, yeah. So every time you use the word she, you punch me in the gut and tell me that my masculinity and my non binary identity does not matter.
Right.
And you further my gender dysphoria, which is exactly what fuels most people's suicidal tendencies, which I
Right.
have had. I'm not saying I'm going to kill myself over what you're saying to me right now, but if
Right.
you continue to do it, I'm going to have to distance from you because you're toxic
Right.
to my field. Now, this guy was like, oh, by the time we were done, he was a changed man. He was
Wow.
like, I I had no idea the impact of my words. I thought it was stupid that I kept messing up, but I just didn't know how important it was.
That's The same lady that would keep misgendering, I broke it down to her. I said, every time you misgender me, I said, you're putting my life in danger. Every single time, especially when you do it publicly, you're putting me in danger, because now all they're seeing is a man, but you're saying she, and then they're going to start asking questions. Somebody's going to get offended and call and think I'm a liar because I'm hiding and what I am what I was born. I hate saying biologically, what I was born. I said, so they could be waiting outside for me, beat the shit out of me, rape me. Anything can happen. Kill me, all because they don't like what I am. That's what you're doing every single time. You're putting, not just me, my son works in the back. You're putting him in jeopardy. I said, Sue, I wouldn't put you in jeopardy. I wouldn't put you, would you like it for somebody to put your life on the line? And she was like, well, no. And I'm like, well, you're putting my life on the line. I said, and do you know how many people kill us? We could go up to date right now. I can look it up for you and I could show you how many of us have been killed just for being transgender.
Just this year.
Just this year, you know, and that was one that I realized works as well. Like I like the one you know, and then I told her, I said, and also for the record, I could just start calling you him. Other people who hear it. And guess what? I'm going to be putting your life in jeopardy because they're going to think, wow, that's a dude.
Right.
Can go either way, you know. It sucks,
yeah.
But
and it's kind of an intense experience, but sometimes you have to get intense with people. And I'm not saying you have to do it every time.
Right.
But, you know, I also use the argument that language is the first step in the gender revolution. This is only the first step, just like the first step to curing cancer is not saying I'm dying of cancer, is to say I'm living with cancer, right? That's the first thing you want to start doing is changing your language. And so the first thing to change in gender pronouns in the gender revolution is your language. We have to see gender variant people by using our words. They are more powerful than you ever could imagine.
Exactly.
All right, my friends, we're going to take a little break. And I just want to invite you to come back as we continue to talk about the sacredness of gender and gender bending, how it calls to you and how to answer that call. So my friends, we're going to take a little break so you can go to the bathroom or get yourself a drink or whatever you need to do. We'll be right back.
Hey, I'm Hollis Taylor, and I'm a non-binary person, and I call myself a Divine Androgyne. Be like saying that you're a monk or a practitioner of magic or something like that. Maybe it depends on what path you walk. See, one of the things I noticed as I started to come out and started to identify as non-binary, I started to realize that there was no spiritual path for people like me. There were some things like indigenous people, but I don't want to culturally appropriate. I didn't grow up on a reservation, and I think Two-Spirit is great, and I want them to keep it. And I felt like I had to define my own path because I didn't have a huge background in these things. And so I started to explore things. And of course, some religions shame us, right? And then there's some religions that don't even include us, like Wicca. I went to many rituals and never, not once, did they mention someone that was both or neither gender or god or goddess. Unless you asked, and then they would often have a goddess or something. But there was no language for it. And so as I started my own spiritual path, my own path of holistic learning, I learned that I really needed a spiritual path in order to be who I was. I felt like it was part of humanity. It was part of being a human. And I needed to be celebrated in my spiritual path. I needed to be seen, and I didn't want any of the shame. So that's not for me. That's theirs. And so as I started to unfold, I started to realize that I had my own path, and each one of us actually do. You do. Everybody does. Has their own spiritual path that they're to unlock. Your authenticity is in your heart, just like it was in mine. There were some things I had to go through to unlock those keys, to get closer to who I really was inside. Because all of us are divine conscious beings, and you have to work through some weird stuff sometimes, like cultural norms, and gender roles, and gosh, mental health, and the crap your parents programmed in there. Sometimes we have to unfold that out. And when we do, we get to an authentic person when we move through those surface things. And when we find our authenticity, we can go deeper. We can love deeper. We can love ourselves deeper. We can love other people deeper. And we can enjoy our life fuller and more, and feel more complete by the time it comes time to, end, because we all die. None of us get out of alive. So just consider, as you start to identify and find your gender is not something that was given, that is not something that was assigned to you when you were born. As you start to realize your gender expression, no matter what it is, I'm talking to the drag queens, the drag kings, the gay guys, transgender people, non-binary people, gender-neutral people, all of us, we're all here for a reason. The divine sent us here. We're all here to define our own path. Make it what it is. Follow that part of you that doesn't follow the rules. The part of you that doesn't do what other people are doing. Because that part of you will lead you to the path you need to be on. And you will manifest the beautiful things that the world desperately needs. All of us are where we need you. We need you to step up and bring your most beautiful light to the world. And I hope that that's what this book does. That my book, Divine Androgyne, A Sacred Path for Gender Variant People, and this channel will inspire you to find out who you are and open it up to the world and deliver it. As if we were all waiting for it, but we didn't know what we were waiting for exactly. Show us what that is.
Jack of all trades, master of none, is a figure of speech used in reference to a person who has dabbled in many things rather than gaining expertise by focusing only on one. So much knowledge and wisdom out there at our fingertips, yet so difficult to grasp. Everything and everyone has a little bit of the truth, and it's up to us to determine what our truth is. In this busy world, creating the time, the space to nourish our body, mind, and soul has become a difficult task. Join me on this journey of learning as we touch diverse topics in spirituality and wellness. Using a skeptical yet open perspective, we will learn together, for we are all students of life and experience. There is no right or wrong path. There's only your path, your journey. So let's begin our adventure and explore all the world has to offer, and let us become a master of none. We're back.
Hey, glad you're back. And I just want to say I'm excited about your Master of None.
Yes. It is a very small project and I'm very excited with it.
I think it's actually really cool.
Yeah, I do like a lot of 5-minute videos of just, I don't know, thoughts or lessons. Once a month we do an actual class. Last month I think we did animal totems, ravens. I think it was called Ravens, Crows, and Bears. Oh my, and we basically broke down the animal totems for that, I guess, astrological or zodiac month.
Okay.
And then next month we're going to be doing from October into November. So and do the animal totems for that. So that way every month we can actually see what the totems, how they reflect on our personalities and things like that. So
how are they connected to the zodiac, other than obviously some zodiac?
Well, it's really more connected to the moon, because there are 13 moons a year. So that's kind of how I figured it's connected to the zodiac, because it's literally from the moon to moon. So
okay, so you're basing it on like where the moon, like whatever moon zodiac cycles, the sign is in. Okay.
Yeah. So if like Libra is in, let's say, okay, we're in Libra now, but beginning of September it was Virgo, and now we're going into October, but then it'll go into Scorpio. Well, it's kind of the same with the totems. Like we'll be like, and there's usually more than one totem, because we don't, like, not every Libra is a Libra. It's right. Like the planets mean different. It's the same thing with the animal totems. Not every animal is for that just one month, or that one area. It's more than one animal. So
sure. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. I was just wondering how they were connected. That's animal totems. And I'm thinking like Scorpio, are you going to do the scorpion?
No, I think theirs is totally different. Well, and it's also based on northern, like the Americas, because depending on where you are, like somewhere in Africa, there would be different totems that represent them, because they're in Africa. They wouldn't have, what we have, and like we wouldn't have an elephant because they're not really from here. So
yeah, probably not. And well, scorpion, I seen a scorpion in Las Vegas, Nevada, out in the we were actually at a fire circle. It was actually where I got married. But anyway, we were cleaning up our campsite, and I was picking things up, and that's the first and only time I've ever seen a live scorpion in the wild.
Right.
And it's at the Valley of Fire. There's no trees or plants, and if there is, there's little sage bushes or something. Right. And anyway, I picked up a piece of cardboard, and this little guy came scampering out, and I was like,
I would have been terrified. I was like, oh,
it was a little scary. Yeah, I was a little. I stepped back. Gave it some room. Scorpions don't usually bite unless they get cornered or something. Yeah. So of course he took off into the wild, and I was like, okay, bye.
You enjoy life. See you later. Keep going.
Yeah. But I do, there have apparently been some pretty big scorpions in Costa Rica too. So, and there's a whole different set of animals. Like when you travel, even, they say your astrology changes when you travel. And that's probably also what happens with the animals, because I feel very connected to sloths when I go to Costa Rica, and monkeys in general. Right. So they're pretty awesome creatures.
Well, it was funny. Somebody had told me, well, your totem's crows, and there are no crows in Puerto Rico. I said, that's because they're extinct, but there were crows. There were actually crows in Puerto Rico. There are no crows in Puerto Rico.
I've never been to Puerto Rico yet. That's what I was just thinking. I haven't been there yet. I've been to Costa Rica, but
their
not there.
crows were actually red eyes, black with white hair.
Huh.
The original crows from Puerto Rico. You can find them in the Dominican Republic,
but not in Puerto
but
Rico.
not in Puerto Rico. Mm-hmm.
Well, that's sad. Well,
yeah,
I'm sure they'll move back at some point.
Let's hope. It's been 100 years. I'm hoping. Just give us the ones from the DR, okay? Give us the ones from the Dominican Republic and let us repopulate.
Yeah, yeah. I thought they were kind of everywhere, crows.
Yeah.
But
they have more magpies.
Oh, I like those. I guess I like all birds. But I was just gonna say that I put in the chat, you guys, if you're looking to have your dream interpreted, put it in the chat, and we'll take a little break and do the dream interpretation, since I forgot to say it before we went to break.
I forgot
too. Oops. But that's because we were talking about such a beautiful topic.
Yes.
Of the sacred gender bend. And I was thinking about the other people that I've witnessed sort of push gender boundaries. And some of them are just gay guys. Like if you ask them, they're like, "No, I'm just gay." And then you're like, "Okay." But they push the gender, like they're just effeminate.
Yeah.
Or they're just masculine. I know masculine expressing lesbians. They don't usually, not some of them, of course, are not great, like TERFs and things like that don't like trans people. But but a lot of them are just, they're fine with trans people. They just never seen themselves as trans.
Right.
But they definitely express outside the binary. And I don't know about you, but have you ever been influenced by one of those people? Even if just by meeting them, you kind of even question your own expression.
I don't know that I question my own, but I think in meeting them, I mean, I can think of someone right off the top of my head from Harrisburg, and they are just, their expression, it's literally like a painting just exploded on stage, and they like, I looked at that, and I don't know that it influenced me, but I thought, oh my God, that courage, that strength, that pride, that, like everything that they represent forward was, and what they put on stage and how they carry themselves. No apologies, like totally unapologetic. That would be the most influence, just seeing their personality in their boldness. And that's inspiring, especially being as a trans person, it's very inspiring to see this person just, this is who I am. This is the way it is. You're not going to put me in a box. You're not going to put me in a gender. You're not going to put me in anything. And their expression is just probably, once again, it's just a beautiful expression, and it's very inspiring. It's hard. Like I said, I can embrace my feminine aspects, but they only go so far. Like mine go basically when it comes to parenting. I am a mother. I am a typical mom, but that's where all my feminine energy goes. Like it doesn't really go anywhere else. And, especially having the opportunity to birth children, like not a lot of people, trans men have that opportunity. And I was very fortunate pre-transition. I was able to birth my children the whole nine, but that's as far as my feminine can go.
Mm-hmm.
It kind of stifles right there. It stops.
Yeah, mine mostly is like from the past too.
Right.
Like mine's kind of asleep in a way, or going to sleep, since I'm going through menopause. Haha. And I'm going, bye.
Yeah.
So and I'm happy to see it go.
Right.
I do feel like I'm stepping into true androgyny, actually, physically.
Right.
Physically, which I guess is kind of maybe what it felt like for you after you had surgeries.
Yeah.
is that I feel like now, as I'm naturally going through menopause, that I'm stepping into what is to be androgyny for the rest of my life, physical androgyny. And no one would argue that, like, even cisgendered women going through menopause, they go through this whole thing about letting go of their womanhood. And of course, for me, it was like, that was just me pretending. It was more like a character that I held, than a real part of who I was, except that I have all these experiences because I did spend the first 30 years of my life trying to be a woman, and doing my best to be that. And so I think that those are the experiences I'm not willing to give up. And you know what's interesting is when I was questioning, when I was coming to terms, I met some people that were very private trans people, like super private. Like they didn't, like, not like you LeKross, where you come out and you say, I'm a trans man. They would just be like, I'm a man. You didn't know they were trans. I didn't know they were trans. And then I got to know them a little bit more. And then both of them came out to me in private. They came out to me and said, I'm trans. And they felt like they had to tell me they were trans. And because we were getting closer. And I wasn't aware that they were trans, you know. And then I had another friend, and she went through a really private thing, and it was so private she couldn't even barely chat with me or allow me to publicly talk about her because of her work in the world, because she was working in Africa, where they're currently locking people up. We talked about this last week with Rusty Rose. But she was trans, and it was such a thing. She couldn't even have me talk, like use her name or friend her or tag her on Facebook about my experience, even though the whole time she was behind the scenes supporting me. So both of these people, one's a trans man and one's a trans woman, both of these people were sort of secretly trans. And they didn't tell everybody, but they changed my world. So even if you're a private trans person, and, you know, a lot of them will feel their heart, like that's what my trans woman friend, when she realized she was trans and she seen me struggling with it, she was like, you know, I know you're trans and you don't have to take hormones. You don't have to have surgeries to be trans. I know that I did, but you don't have to. And she was really the one that kind of gave me that permission. And I think that that's vital, that we give people permission to, number one, be themselves. Number two, to express their gender variance however they see fit. We can't decide for somebody else whether they need to come out of the closet, whether they need to transition, whether they need to ask for pronouns all the time, or however they might express. We can't make those decisions for people. And even as trans people, we would like to. we would like to be like, you need to be out of the closet with me. But not. And there are times that I've felt that way. Totally get it.
I think, I mean, usually when I think of people who keep it so private, maybe their work is more one-on-one. You know, their work might be, it doesn't make their path any less sacred. Their path is just as impactful, but it might be more one-on-one. Like you said, this person came up to you once they felt the safety and you know, in the sense that, okay, this person I can tell, and look at what ended up happening. That person ended up talking to you and then gave you this stepping stone to go even further. So they didn't have to come out, you know. I mean, I sometimes, I've told my wife, I said, I'd like to just pick up and leave sometimes and just start somewhere new and delete all my social media and just be a guy and just live and, you know, go bowling on Thursdays and, you know, water my lawn. But, you know, I mean, sometimes you want to do that, but then sometimes, you know, with me, I know I wouldn't be able to do it. I'd go crazy. I'm too much of I'm too much of a person who's out there, and I wouldn't be able to
Mhm.
do it. So it's like I got to kind of take the consequences that come with it, because I label myself as a trans man, and that's what I'm always going to be, a trans man. So I won't have the opportunity to just be a guy mowing my lawn, you know?
And you know what though, the world needs you just the way you are, and that's like one of my big messages to
Hmm.
everybody is that the world needs you just the way you
Just the
are,
way you
just
are.
how whatever is calling to you right now,
Mhm.
and that could change tomorrow, and that's fine too.
Right, right,
Because a lot of shit has changed. I'm 46 years old. A lot of shit has changed
right.
since I was 20. Even 5 years, life changes, and
Yeah,
I think that's another thing that trans people can remember is that shit changes. This shit passes, and it gets better. It really
yeah,
does get
yeah,
better. Like I know that movement, it gets better. I thought that was a really important movement because it really does get better over time. When you first come out, it can get really messy. It can be really complicated, especially when your family's involved and everything else. And you can do a number on yourself.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
want to invite people to remember to be careful of the self-talk that's going on in here because
Mhm.
that's the loudest voice you hear.
True. That
And
is true.
so, unfortunately, if that voice is telling you that you're not special, that you're crazy because you're trans, or that you're dirty, you're a pervert, um, or any of those things,
Right.
I know there's 100 different stories that trans people tell themselves. I just want to say that none of those things are real.
Right.
That's just the internalized shame of being gender variant coming out in your personal language.
Right.
That's all it is. That's all it is.
I
So,
always, I always say there's a, whether you believe in natural selection or you believe in God, there are no mistakes when it comes to this. If you believe in natural selection, you're evolving. You're just another evolved human being. If you believe in God, and God don't make mistakes. So we can go in a spiritual aspect. God doesn't make any mistakes. He made you exactly the way you are. Exactly the way you are. Why? And if we're going to go on that point, God makes you go through your life for a reason. You go through that reason, so that way in turn later on down the line, it's that paying it forward, that helping that other person who's going through the same thing. And if it's natural selection, which I believe, I'm just evolved. I'm the next evolved man. So
and that's
you know,
important too.
exactly.
There's a type of astrology called evolutionary astrology. You might want to look it up, bro, because you
Okay.
might really like it. Evolutionary astrology believes that through astrology, that people will change, that people will actually that, and it is true that people are rapidly. First of all, people live till they're 100 years old or
Yeah.
close to 100, right into their 80s and 90s. So there you go, right there. There's a huge shift in humanity, and through that, because they'll live through their Saturn returns 3 times, probably two,
Wow.
3 times, that they'll be changed
Yeah.
because the planets will have influenced them for a longer period of time. They may even experience a Uranus returns. And so then what ends up happening there is that people are evolving, and they're saying we're evolving faster and faster and faster as time goes on. And I kind of agree with them. I really love evolutionary astrology, and I love the evolutionary perspective of things because, in my opinion, that's really what's going on here. We're in a gender revolution, and all of us, the whole world, whether they like it or not,
Yeah.
we are evolving past binary,
Right.
and it's important that we do
Yeah.
because there's certain things that come with the binary that none of us want,
Right. Right.
like sexual assault, and it's already been proven. You can go look it up. Um, the scientists have already proven that the number one drive for sexual assault is the binary, is because
Mm.
men are trained in their heads because number one, the top perpetrator are men, right? Okay, and then what happens is that men believe in their minds that they are that they deserve the
Yeah,
sexual
entitlement.
there's a sense of entitlement for the sexuality, and then most of the time the victim are women. Now that's not all the time, but that is a very large chunk of
Yeah.
sexual assault. And so if we can get rid of the binary, there's one of the things that we could have less of. And I think
Right.
we could all agree that that would be great if that went away. And I really do believe in an evolutionary perspective that
Yeah.
someday the binary will be invalid,
Yeah.
not part of our reality. And I think we're all changing the world, every single one of us. And
I
this is an
mean,
evolutionary process.
imagine a world without toxic masculinity. Imagine a world without the need for feminism because of the fact of, you know what I mean? Imagine a beautiful world where we wouldn't have to have any of that, you know? And those are also things that are, and what, I mean, I'm don't get me wrong. I'm a feminist. I'm, you know, and
Me
it's
too,
there
man.
for a reason because of toxic masculinity, but it wouldn't be there if there wasn't any toxic masculinity. So it's this, you know, it's that's the effect of that cause. You know, everything comes with a cause and effect. And, you know, it would be nice to see where we live in a world where we don't need it, where we don't have to fight for equality, or we don't have to fight for these things. What a beautiful world it would be. And I think that's what evolution is about. You know, it's about us becoming better, you know, and removing those things because they have no place in the universe. They don't have any place there. So
Totally agree. And some people are like, oh, I have to have my gender identity. Like they don't have any problem with me being a they, but at the same time, they really identify with being a woman or a man. Um, and I'm not saying just because I take away the binary doesn't mean that you lose your identity. Why can't you
right,
just be you,
right, right.
whatever that looks like? And
Yeah,
if part of your identity is to be a woman, well, then okay.
yeah. But
Um, but I think eventually that stuff will fade away.
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because we're, you know, at some point we're gonna be like, okay, it doesn't matter what you look like, procreate, have, you know, that's what it's gonna end up being. I mean, look at how beautiful when you see a trans man who is pregnant. That's probably one of the most beautiful things you could see. You
Hmm.
know, I mean, I think that's amazing. Like, I don't know
Yeah,
if
I
you've
know a
seen the
trend.
pictures, but when you see that, and it's, why does that have to go with the binary? Why can't it just be, I'm giving life. I'm giving life.
I know a trans man that's a father that gave birth. He came
Yeah.
off a T. He came off a T, got pregnant, and now he's still a father. And his
Yeah.
child's about, I think his child's about 3 or 4, and the child absolutely loves the
The
dancing
dancing hippo.
hippo.
Yeah.
um, and one of the reasons that he loves to read that to his child is because his child can see that gender doesn't show up everywhere. It is
Right.
the one genderless place that he can like show again and again, and that's what he told me, you know.
Right.
And I think that gender will dissipate because there's so many people doing that exactly what I just described with their children.
Mhm.
And that's beautiful in my opinion. When
Right.
children are not put in a shell as little ones, you know, we don't need to tell little boys that they can't wear dresses, or we
Yeah.
don't need to
Like,
tell
what is
little
that?
girls how to be a little girl. Like just let them be.
And they will
Um
figure it out all on their own. What they want to play with, what they want to do.
that's
I used to
right.
be a big, like, my boys wanted dolls, and I would say, and people would look at me funny. I said, why is it we could give dolls to little girls and say, be good mommies, but you can't give dolls to little boys and say, be good daddies?
Right.
Like, why, what is the big deal? And why can't you just say parent? Why do we have to be stuck on that? Now, don't get me wrong, I'm called mom. I am male and I want to be called mom. I don't want to be called dad. I don't like the word dad. But, you know, now to my little one, I'm pops, but to my other, I'm mom. And I like that whole confusion in people's faces when they see. I live for it. because it just screws them up.
Yeah, and in my opinion, here's my favorite thing to do is to refer to someone's child as they. I say
Yeah.
that a child under 5 is too young to know if they're a boy or a girl.
Yeah.
And if they're not given any other option, how would they know? And so I will often refer to people's children as they,
Right.
especially if their child's older than 5 and expresses outside the binary and has never been presented with that choice, I will
Right.
also refer to they. Now, I do know a young trans boy who was born and assigned to a girl when he was born, but then he, at 5 years old, told his mom that he was a boy. And he's a very special young boy, and his mom, she actually has a beautiful writing about how her dream of her daughter died, but she gave birth to a son. So even at 5 years old, she had this experience. This child was only 5 when they came out.
Wow.
And what a powerful experience, right? And it's
Yeah.
such an honor to know both of them, and
Right.
such an honor to witness their experience, because I've witnessed this little boy grow up.
Right.
And now I do refer to him as he, because he told me that's what his pronoun is. And he's and I was like, okay, man. And he's like, and yours is they. And I was like, that's right. And I was like, that's because I have boy and girl in me. He's like, oh.
I'm gonna have to
Okay.
digest that one.
Yeah, he had to digest that one. Yeah, and he's probably still digesting it.
Right. Right.
So but I think that children are our future, obviously, and if they're raised differently, then the future is bound to be different.
Absolutely.
Because
Absolutely.
I was never given the option of anything other than to be a girl.
Right. Right. It's so funny because you think about it and you're like, if a kid says, I want to be an astronaut, okay. I want to be a ballerina, okay. Why can't it be, I want to be a girl or I want to be a boy? Okay. Why can't the answer just be the same all around? I don't know why you could be whatever you want, you'll figure it out. You know what? But at the same token, you'll figure it out when you're older. You're going to figure it out, if this is what you say, then this is what it is.
So those little children are hearing their sacred call earlier and earlier and earlier. And I'm so amazed at
I don't know if it's earlier. I really don't know, because I was 5 and I knew. I don't know if it's earlier or the fact that society is allowing them to vocalize it. It's not getting shut down anymore. It's like I always say, there isn't more violence in the world. It's the same violence. It's just you see it more now because of social media, things like that. But I don't know if it's happening earlier. I think it's still happening young. It's just not getting shot down like it did if I would have said I was a boy in 5th grade, that girl said, "You're daddy." I said, "Yes, I am." And when I got home, my mom, she was all upset. And you're not daddy. You're not daddy. Well, yeah, I am. No, you're not. Oh, then I guess I'm not. It just got shot down and shot down. So I think that's part of the evolutionary process. We're looking at our kids now. We're hearing our kids now. We're listening. We're not shutting them down. And if they say, what if I want to be a boy? What if you do? Okay.
Yeah, I don't even know. I guess I didn't comprehend that I wanted to be a boy. I just played the boy when we role played with my friends.
Slid right into that.
I was just the dad.
It's just natural.
And that was okay. And I had a lot of little boyfriends that wanted to be a girl. And I didn't think that was odd at all.
Right. See?
But apparently it was, because I had a resonance that was calling those kinds of people towards me. And I've always had that resonance my whole life. And I believe that that's part of my sacred calling, is to be around, to call forward gender variant people and to honor their sacredness. Because that's the other thing that I ran into. One of the first terms I ran into about being sacred and being gender variant was two-spirit.
Yeah.
And then at first I had the idea of, when you hear two-spirit, you're like, oh, they mean like a trans person. But they
Right.
actually don't. They actually, it's the entire rainbow. It's
Yes.
the GLBTQIA plus community. It's
Everybody.
everybody.
More people should get on board with that. In other words, we're all under the rainbow. All of us. Two spirits means you are carrying both in your body. You're carrying both genders. There's not, once again, effeminate men. They are two spirit. They carry a more feminine aspect in themselves.
Yeah, and I think that two spirit just was the word that made
Yeah.
sense to them, and I
Yeah.
actually think it's like some sort of loose interpretation of many
Yes.
tribal languages.
Yes.
And of course now there's like Two Spirit Society and
Mhm.
Two Spirit International and all kinds of beautiful things like that. But the interesting thing is what I wonder about our evolution going forward is, will it look like where we came from?
I'm
Which,
hoping.
because before Christianity, before that happened, um, the tribes, we celebrated gender variant people.
Yes. Yes.
So Two Spirit, and in Taino, did they have any evidence of that? Like,
They
did they have
have
any?
what we call the Behicas and the Semis. I had sent you a picture.
Yep.
It's supposed to
Let's
have
see.
both genders.
This one
These were the
here.
sacred people. Now, a lot of people, now, if you look, there's the little penis, and right underneath, people will think it's a scrotum. No, that's a vagina.
Okay.
So,
So it's
because it's
almost
split.
intersex.
Yes, basically, which is just a representation of both genders within. And understand, it's a medicine person. They are the sacred people. So this wouldn't have been looked upon as anything. Like, there was no need for a word for it because they just existed. So, and they were sacred. So instead of saying, oh, they had both genders, then no, that's the sacred people right there. They're the ones who are the bridge between men and women. They are the ones who are the bridge between old and young. They are the ones they were the bridge to everything. They would care for the children. They would teach. They were the ones who cured people, cured marriages, cured sickness. They did everything. And there were two types. There was the ones that were the tribal leaders, and then the ones who were the journeyers. And the journeyers were the ones who would actually take people who were lost, their souls were lost after they passed, and take them across. While you're still alive, you're crossing them over.
Oh, okay.
So
I get it.
that's what a high standard these people were. And they weren't, like I said, there wasn't really a term of two spirit or anything like that. They were just the sacred people. And they were the ones who were the leaders, the medicine people, the Behikias. So, so I think it will be nice when we can get back to a time where it's not about boy or girl. We're just the sacred people, because that's what we are in the beginning, and that's what we're going to be in the end.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
There's there's a theory I came across, is that some humans, um even before the ancient people that we're talking about, even before, like back when, like if you believe that there were humans like that built the before the pyramids. Now of course we had an Egyptian show where we talked about the Egyptian. They didn't see gender the same way. Gender was very fluid for them. um it was just kind of like, what?
yeah,
And so gender variant person was just a gender variant. It wasn't, they didn't they had words for it, but they didn't, it wasn't a big deal. It was just sort of fluid. But even before that, there was an ancient peoples that went extinct, and some people say that they crashed in Atlantis. So if you hear about the underworld, the underwater world thing, and
right,
that those people were actually more of an alien type of human, that were both, that all of the humans were intersex,
right,
in a way. Um, and that there was a great separation, in order for these people to have an identity, and in order for them to sort of grow an ego,
mm,
in order for certain things to happen in the evolutionary in the evolutionary, I guess, cycle or path, and that these people were essentially intersex, and that comes to now is like there are intersex people alive today. I'm just gonna say that there are intersex people alive today. In fact, if you go to the Rainbow Soul Facebook page, you will find a post that I posted a couple of days ago from Mr. Anasuzi, and they are an intersex person and they fight for intersex rights all the time. And I just want to say that when it still everywhere in the world, which this is completely ridiculous to me, everywhere in the world, when an intersex person is born, they mutilate them upon birth.
Yep.
And that is horrible.
You're literally taking away physically their sacredness. You don't have that right. You don't have the right to take anything away from them. Once again, let that be their choice. Let it be their choice, or their, not even their choice. Let it be their option.
Right.
Whether they want to or not. What if they don't? What if they want to stay that way? Leave them alone. You know, I can never understand that. What gives a person the right to decide somebody else's?
Well, and in a lot of instances, you can join intersex groups and get to know the intersex community pretty easily. They're pretty open book. And a lot of those instances where the parents decide on one gender, the person is usually the other one. Or they want to honor their intersex identity. And either way, and some of them don't even know they're intersex until something happens at puberty. Like they suddenly bleed or something weird happens to their genitalia. I have an intersex friend that had a penis that started to grow breasts in puberty, and then they found out that they were intersex, and their mom had a lot of explaining to do. And then they got pretty mad at her and wasn't able to stay present with her, but moved on in their life. And when I knew them, they were in their early 20s, and they were actually cooking in at Hershey. And they came and stayed at my house for a few days, and I was privileged enough to cook with them and to get to know them. And they said that they really wanted to identify with their intersex identity, and that they felt that they were born that way for a reason. And that's who they were. And so they actually had corrective surgery on their penis to bring it back to almost the way it was, which was actually hard to find. So I'm just saying that intersex people are special people, and we need to honor them too. They're sacred. They're as sacred as you and I.
Exactly.
And maybe that's why the trans and non-binary community is here. Maybe we're here to open those doors, to help slam those doors open for intersex people.
Yeah.
That has been a question of mine a lot. Like, because we can. Does that make sense? Because we can.
Oh, absolutely.
Because we can, because their rights have been snatched away upon birth. They don't have any rights from the beginning.
Yeah.
And that's sad. So intersex people, just want to honor them right here in this moment, because I think like that image that we looked at, this image LeKross, I'm wondering if intersex people were being born, and maybe even more of them were born back then. Like, how would we ever know?
Right. Because there was no documentation. This is it. You know what you see there, or you'll see petroglyphs about the medicine people. You know, so it's
right.
A lot of our stuff was lost, man. I mean, it sucks, but the beauty is history. You know, whether it's bad or, you know, sometimes it repeats itself. It's bad, but hopefully this time it's repeating itself and it's good. We're heading right back full circle to where we belong. And it's and I call it our birthright. It's our birthright. Being born the way we are, it is our right to be treated with respect and honored, because we can bridge. We have that gift. I don't know a trans person who is incapable of bridging. There is a bridge that they can do, and I think you're born with that. That's something that the Taino teach. You're either born with it or you're not. Not everybody actually has that gift of bridging, and you have to be born with that. And I believe that people who fall under the trans, spectrum are people who were born with that bridge.
Yeah, and sometimes they just build that bridge for one or two people,
Right?
And sometimes they build that bridge for thousands,
RuPaul, right? But we're bridge builders, and I think that's and that's why people end up getting called, and that's why I also think that in the same token, the suicide rate is so high. When they can't be the bridge, when they're not allowed to be the bridge, what they were called to do. When you're not just stifling them emotionally, you're stifling them spiritually.
Yeah, I think you're taking that away, and that's kind of what happens, is that you take away their sacredness. And that's why I wrote that book. That's why I wrote this book. Because in my opinion, most of the transgender people that were killing themselves felt a lack of sacredness.
Yeah.
They felt a lack of or even a lack of like reason for being alive, right? They didn't see why they should be alive. And to me, that's pretty that's sad, because then I'm like, but you are so sacred, and you are changing the world just by being alive.
Yep.
Just by being alive, you are being sacred. And there are so many different versions and so much sacredness. And so I always remind them that it's only Christianity that's done this. That most of the rest of the religion, not all, but most of them that I've encountered have been pretty gender open. Even Jewish. I know a lot of transgender Jewish people. I don't know why, but I do. And it's probably not it's probably the more modern people, but in the end, we're all.
Hey, didn't you see Yentl? No. With Barbara Streisand?
No. And in fact, one of the astrologers that we're having on, so I want to talk about what's coming up, is that next week we are going to be featuring Rue Sparks, who is an artist and an author, and they are non-binary, and they have some great books out, like fiction and really good stuff, and an amazing artist. I can't wait to show you guys. And so Rue Sparks is going to be here next week. And the week after that, we are having astrology. And we were having Michael Barwick, who is a professional astrologer. He's also happens to be queer. And he is really fabulous. And he is helping change the Christian community to a more queer accepting. He is part of a GLBTQIA Catholic church in Canada. In Canada. So so I thought that was a really interesting. And so we'll be doing that, and we also have some shows later on in the month about mediumship and about Samhain. So don't miss those shows. I'm going to do a quick tarot reading as we come to a close. And I want to honor all of the gender variant people out there. If you're watching this show and you're hearing this, or you're watching it later, it doesn't matter. These messages are for you. Everything that LeKross and I said is meant for you. We're here trying to help your world become a little bit more open, and for you to see who you are in your own sacred path, whatever that looks like to you. And it can look a lot of different ways. So I just wanted to say that. And I'm using this deck that's called Love is Love, or Pride. And it's a special deck that every single card is a collaboration of a different GLBTQIA artist. And so I'm going to lay out a little reading here. And the best thing about this is that there's gender variant people in this deck. And The first card is about celebration. So, as the summer comes to a close, this is the 10 of Cups, and
Oh,
you can
nice.
see that these two people are celebrating, and she's pregnant and pregnancy in this deck doesn't just mean like literally pregnant. It also means like new projects.
Yeah.
So, celebration of new projects or the birthing of new projects, especially here, that's what this is all about. It's the honoring where you've come from, honoring the celebration that we've all experienced this summer, however you've celebrated, whatever that looks like for you. And that's what this is to remind you of. And these two beautiful people um, kissing and enjoying the celebration, it really is to remind you about that. And right now, this card, which is the messenger. If there was something you heard tonight that really spoke to your heart and your soul, take it with you, because there were messages here tonight. And also the role of being the messenger, LeKross, for you and I and anyone else out there. I think it was JoJo, is like a committee. He's doing the LGBTQ committee. And that's also really important, that that whatever role you're playing. The other night I was hanging out with a teacher that's the head of the GLBT community in his school. So I just want to say, as the messenger, pay attention to your messages and know that they are important. Take them forward. Make sure you present them to, look at this beautiful crowd listening and supporting, because your messages are important. I assure you, they are vital to the gender revolution. We need thousands of people speaking about this stuff. And this is about the future. This is about a warning about black and white, seeing things black and white, and also seeing two sides of a person or seeing two sides of a situation. That's what this is about. It's also about like your belief system, especially if you're kind of going back and forth. You see the moon there above their heads. The moon is meant to symbolize the cycles that we go through and to honor our own cycles, however that might look. And this beautiful two-headed being is meant to be sacred as well, because this is a sacred symbol, I believe, from the Renaissance era. It resembles that anyway, and that's what it always reminds me of. And it's meant to remind us of our shadow and our light, because we are entering into the darkest time of the year. If you live in the United States, if you live in the Northern Hemisphere, this is the darkest time of the year. So we are going to be coming in contact with our own shadows. Pay attention to your shadow, listen to your shadow, see what your shadow has to teach you. And that's kind of what this is all about, is paying attention to both sides of ourselves. Don't dismiss a fully shadowy side of yourself. That's what that's all about. So the first card is about celebrating where we came from and celebrating all of our new projects and stuff like that. That your message is very, very important, and to keep presenting it, bringing it forth until someone listens. And even beyond that, keep bringing it forward. And also this card is reminding you that we all have two sides, and that, if you have a shadow side, it's okay. And, to honor your shadow as well as your light, and to try to see the whole part of the situation. So that's what also that's about. So, my friends, I want to thank you, LeKross. Thank you, LeKross.
Thank you again.
This is so much fun. I love talking about sacred gender with you. And I want to thank all of our audience, everyone that's downloading this, watching it, listening to it, however you come through. Thank you very much for watching Rainbow Soul, and we appreciate you. Just know that.
Absolutely.
And you are important, and so is your message. Bring it forward. Good night, my friends.
Good night.
Thank you for watching Rainbow Soul, part of the WLFE DB Network, a queer perspective on spirituality beyond religion. We appreciate you sharing the show on your timeline. Follow us on social media of your choice and join our Facebook group, Rainbow Soul. We want to hear from you. Share your topic ideas for Hollis and LeKross. Explore upcoming shows and interesting guests. The Rainbow Soul Facebook group, where we build community of questioning seekers. Rainbow Soul. where spirituality is our medicine.
Jack of all trades, master of none, is a figure of speech used in reference to a person who has dabbled in many things rather than gaining expertise by focusing only on one. So much knowledge and wisdom out there at our fingertips, yet so difficult to grasp. Everything and everyone has a little bit of the truth, and it's up to us to determine what our truth is. In this busy world, creating the time, the space to nourish our body, mind, and soul has become a difficult task. Join me on this journey of learning as we touch diverse topics in spirituality and wellness. Using a skeptical yet open perspective, we will learn together, for we are all students of life and experience. There is no right or wrong path. There's only your path, your journey. So let's begin our adventure and explore all the world has to offer, and let us become a master of none.